Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Carefulist the podcast. I'm your host, Katie Christophic, founder of The Carefulist. Today, we are talking with Chef Maria, and she's going to talk to us about how she got that name. So, why don't we dive right into that story and your caregiving story as well?
Oh, let's get baking, Katie. Okay. They didn't know they were in for cheesy jokes. Yeah, my journey has taken an unconventional path, to say the very least. And it started, in the IT world, being a consultant for Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. And then when my daughter was leaving home and I was becoming an empty nester, I'm like, you know what? I've made a great living and, stayed at the same employer for her so she didn't have to change schools at an inconvenient time. But what do I want to do for me? And that was when I found that, you know, the love I'd had for baking as a kid, being on a step stool in the kitchen with my mom and mom, let me lick the beaters, no, you're gonna, die of salmonella, there's raw eggs in there. I'm still alive today, thank you. Um, but I decided, okay, you know what? That love I have for baking, I think I want to do something with that. And what really sparked it, the story I always tell, and it's on my website too, is I was in a Bible study. And, my goodness, we have to bring food because in that hour you're in that study, Jesus might return and you might be hungry. So it was always, what are you going to bring? And it was a friendly competition between me and another lady about what we were going to bring for dessert. And that sparked that memory of being in the kitchen with my mom. So when my daughter was, leaving home, I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And it brought back that memory, and I decided I wanted to pursue it professionally. So that's where the story began.
Wow,
Yeah, there's
that's
so
amazing.
many more twists and turns to that. I mean, you could like get your popcorn ready and settle in, and we could just rip for a while, but that's where it began.
Well, since we're talking about it, what are some of those twists and turns? How
Oh,
did that
okay.
evolve?
Oh, we're spilling all the tea today. Okay. Um, Yeah, I mean, the first one was I was a contractor and I was really scared to tell, my boss that I was leaving because when you're a contractor, you're not a full-time employee. So they can go, hey, thanks for your service. Bye, you're out. And one of my friends coached me on how to approach it. So I was really addressing the concerns that she would have first. So she would hear that. And then I could say, but I understand what's going on with the team. And long story short, I was able to stay the whole 2 or 3 weeks, however much notice I gave. I think I gave more than 2 weeks and completed out. And she thanked me for, considering the team. So that was really huge. But the big twist of the whole story is I went to the French pastry school and did one of their non-credit programs first. It was a summer boot camp for, I don't know if it was over a weekend or a week. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like this. And so I did that about a year. I think it was maybe a year before I transitioned permanently to become a full-time non-traditional student and then started attending full time. But one of the best part, well, there's a lot of good parts to the story, but one of the most prevalent parts to the story is I lived in a town called Normal, Illinois. Look it up. It is a real town. It's next to Bloomington, and they have a train station there. They have an Amtrak. And I remember being at the dentist office and telling my dentist about it. They have their fingers in your mouth, and they always want to have an in-depth conversation with you when they have their
Right.
fingers in your mouth. And I remember him poking me, going, they just added a new train, a later one coming back from Chicago, check it out. And I'm like, okay. And so it turned out that later train schedule that they had added allowed me to go and attend the classes and take the train back and forth. Now brace yourself for 6 months, 5 days a week. Amtrak at that time, so I have to quote, I have to qualify it, was never on time. So I spent probably about 5 hours round trip on the train each day. And I have the stack of train tickets just off to the side. It was 224 train rides to complete the 6 month long program.
Whoa.
Now my program
That's a
was
lot of train
it
time.
was a lot, but this was back in 2007, so I was a little bit younger with a few less gray hairs because I look and think about that now and I'm like, oh my goodness, that was exhausting. And I'm thankful that I didn't go to a year-long program because I couldn't even imagine doing all that commuting for a year. And I made that choice because I had a house, in Normal that I'd had for quite a while. It was only 6 months, and Chicago cost of living, even back then in 2007, was astronomical.
Yeah.
So it was cheaper to take the train in back and forth every day.
Yeah. Wow.
I know,
So,
right?
so that's the backstory to the Chef Maria part.
hmm
How does that translate to the caregiving side of things? And then we'll talk about how it all parlays together.
Okay, yeah, get your second bucket of popcorn ready for this. Yeah, how the chef portion happened is I well, I have to kind of frame the story.
Mhm.
When DEI became eliminated, through an executive order. I was doing DEI training through an interactive dessert tasting, and people would always do what my daughter and I call the puppy dog head tilt, like, huh? Like they didn't understand it because no one else was doing it. I developed it because initially I wanted to be a speaker at BMW for their 2023 conference, and I needed to present something that was new and original, and it worked. I did, and I killed it. I wish they'd put it in writing, but they don't. But so in January when everything changed and everybody that I had been prospecting and dealing with, all the customers and clients and prospects, all had to, whoa, 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 and roll back. I'm like, okay, well, I still have bills to pay and need to survive. So what else can I draw on? And I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but I started drawing on my story as being a caregiver for both parents for 8.5 years, having to close down the original brick and mortar bakery that I had out of pastry school when my mom, had a stroke and needed me to be her advocate and not just leave her to the care of a nursing home for what turned out to be 6.5 years. And so I was like, okay, I know I've got the caregiver story, and thank God I've shared that since 2010 when she had the stroke. Otherwise, it would seem like I was just pivoting with no clear direction.
Right.
Like, okay, well, now what are you, a butterfly wrangler? Now you're,
Yeah.
just flipping with no real sense of direction. But since
Mhm.
I shared that story during all that time, people followed it the whole 6.5 year period. And then when I went through it with Alzheimer's with my dad more recently, and I gave them both names on social media so people remembered them, Little Mama and Papa Kemp, then
Mhm.
they're like, oh, okay, this fits, because this was your lived experience and we remember and we've watched you go through it on social media. And
Right.
then I had to figure out how to bring the dessert into it because I'm like, I can't abandon the chef persona. That's what my brand was built on, the logo, the name, the title, all of it. So I'm like, think, 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 think. You're out of the box thinker. Think you can make this work. And I was talking to different colleagues and they helped me piece together, portions of it too, just like I did with the DEI to bring desserts into the caregiving story. And when I first started to explain that, I got the puppy dog head tilts again. People are like, wait a minute, are you going in the home? Are you cooking? Are you baking for people? Are you going in? Are you helping take care of people? I'm like, no, no, wait, time out. I've got to get clearer in my language because I've just confused you. And if I
Mhm.
confuse you, then, you're lost to me as a customer.
Right.
So I decided the best way to bring it together is to use either desserts if it's geographically makes sense, based on where the customer is at, the client is at, or if it's in person, or to use a dessert analogies. Because when
Mhm.
you can bring the temperature down when you're explaining a concept or something that can be emotionally charged or sensitive, if you can take that out of the equation and say, okay, let's go back to, food. And if you have this flavor, or you have this size, or you have this dessert, and or you're putting together this recipe and you don't have all the ingredients you need, I can parallel that to a caregiver journey or the challenges that they run into on a daily basis. I can parallel that to the things that the employer is running into, where it may be showing up as absenteeism or quiet quitting or productivity issues or retention issues. And if I can draw that comparison through dessert, you're going to understand it in a unique way because now it's not Katie anymore. It's not Joe, it's not Jane. You're removing that from it so they can understand it on a deeper level. And when they understand it, then it resonates, it sticks and makes it memorable. So then when they're running into challenges or struggles or some of the things I mentioned with their employees, then they're like, "Oh, okay, now I get it. I didn't understand it before." So that's how I brought the two together so that I get to keep the chef identity, bring the foods into the conversation, keep the business name because I've had it for 11 years and I love it. Um, Plus it's trademark, which wasn't cheap.
And we haven't mentioned it. So the name is,
Beyond Decadence. Yes.
oh, and
Yeah, I'm
it's
sorry.
such a
Yeah.
good name. Yeah, no, that's okay. But for the folks who are listening, yeah, her
Oh,
business name is Beyond Decadence.
yes. Yeah. So that's the backstory and how the two come together. And it's just continuing to make an impact from here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I should say obviously, but I don't know. Maybe there are people somewhere on this planet who don't like dessert. I can't fathom it myself. But from the perspective of dessert bringing joy and
Mhm.
food bringing joy and comfort, one of the questions I like to ask caregivers on the show is while you were in the process of caregiving, what is something that brought you joy or brought joy to the people that you were caring for? Some folks talk about it in the form of humor. Other people don't find humor in the situation and they find joy in some way, whether it's food or a shared story or a memory that comes up for them in a certain circumstance. So I'm curious throughout your journey, what brought you joy?
I think it changed at different times.
Mhm.
I like food. I've always been a fluffy little girl. I had to work really hard to get rid of the fluff. But, um, food brought me joy. I took comfort in that. And I think
Mhm.
that's why food is such a powerful force, even for those who don't like dessert, even though I'm sorry, I don't understand you. But, it triggers memories from, childhood or
Yeah.
family occasions. So I think it's very, a very powerful force. But just the joy and the pleasure of eating and something that just is you know just lights your palate on fire in the best possible way. I found joy in that. Also, I started when I was like, okay, you're a little bit too much of a fluffy girl. You might need to do something about that. Then I started, doing Pilates and strength training.
Mhm.
That helps me a lot, as well as the family or friends more so. Family can be challenging, which I'm sure a lot of our caregivers understand, especially if they're not helping, and stepping up to help you take care of that loved one, then, that can, lead to some, less than pleasant feelings that you have to contend with.
Right.
I found joy at different points, with my parents and some of the funny things that they did or said. But we know that we're doing it because they're our parents or they're someone we love deeply and we know that they love us deeply, but it's still a heavy what was the saying? Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
So it is still very heavy, and you try and find those moments of joy with them, and you find them. However, they are often, followed by the moments that are a lot less joyous because we know
Right.
that they have those light switch moments and you can go through a range of emotions with them in a very short period of time. So
Yeah.
you embrace the good times when they come, knowing that they're probably going to be followed by a less than good time in a few minutes. So I think it's important to have those things beyond or outside of that loved one where you can cling to, where you can set the duration of how long you experience that joy.
Yes. Oh, that is really good advice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gray hairs. I'm telling you, it's all from the gray hairs.
I like to call it hard-won wisdom.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. You aren't a kid. Mhm.
So when we think about how how do I want to say this? When you were talking about other people, whether it be other family members or friends or neighbors, either participating in care or not, is there something someone said or did that you found particularly helpful? Whether it was an action, something they took off your plate to continue the pun, um, or a piece of advice, or they just something that someone did that you found helpful.
I had different people along the way, in both of my journeys. And, for those who can't, see me, this is my thinking face. I'm thinking. My
Mhm.
mom's journey lasted 6 years, 7 months, and 1 day. She actually graduated to be with Jesus on the ninth year anniversary of my pastry school graduation. And she
Wow.
had been there, in the front row. We made a whole smorgasbord of desserts, and she was trying to eat them all. So, I'm glad she had been there. And I had different people come alongside me, and maybe it's because I was in Illinois longer, at that time. I'd lived there for a long time, and her journey was so long that there were people. I remember a friend, this just kind of jumps out where I went on vacation and she went, I had people go and check on her and spend time with her while I was gone. And that was really helpful. Or I remember even during, her final days, I had a friend that I'm still, friends with now. We're not as close, but we're still friends, where she came, and sat with her and, supported me
Mhm.
just, as we were, and then she was actually in hospice by then and, very close to the end. So there were different people came along and there were people, who said, we're praying for you. And I felt like they really were not just, lip service and, you hit the
Mhm.
little hands, on Facebook and go about your life. For
Right.
people who were, checking in on me to see how she was doing and genuinely concerned. So I think that really helped a lot. And the journey with my dad was so much shorter, but he was in such a different state than my mom was in that, there were a lot of challenges, but we had a lot of humor too. And
Mhm.
I think people, they really enjoyed, the Papa Kemp stories. So, and he
Yeah.
was a character because he was ex-Navy and some of the things that came out of his mouth, I'm like, Dad, you can't say that. He's 88 years old. He's like, I can't. I'm like, no. Why not? Because it's not nice. Oh, so it was funny. He was pretty funny.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear as kind of a common theme to that question that I just asked is, and so let me back this up. People are often wondering, what can I do to help somebody who's caregiving? I want to be there for them. I want to take some of the burden. I want to make things easier, whatever. And I think people discount the importance of being able to sit with someone in silence and
Mm.
just knowing, like your friend who showed up,
Mm-hmm.
just showing up and knowing that I am not sitting in this room by myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't know the right thing to say, your physical presence of just being there makes more of an impact than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
And this was however many years ago. And that's the thing that jumped to your mind. So I just want to impress upon people who
Mm-hmm.
are listening, you don't have to come up with a schedule of, I'm going to deliver a meal every Thursday. It doesn't have to be that.
Right.
You can just show up and sit with somebody.
Absolutely. The other thing, if I could add one thing to that,
Mhm.
is, they always say, well, let me know if you need anything. Oh my goodness. Nobody, okay, let me just rip the Band-Aid off. Nobody wants to hear that. That
Right.
just sounds, that sounds so empty, because then you're putting it all on that person,
Yeah.
to come back and, say it just, it, you can see where they're struggling most of the time, or
Mhm.
you can your area of strength. Like I am an out of the box thinker. I'm really good at detail organization and planning. That's my jam. That's my sweet
Mhm.
spot. And So if you know somebody has, if they have a strength, if they can share that with you, not like, well, let me know if you need anything. If you know that they need to take somebody to the doctor, or they need prescription picked up, or they need an errand run. Hey, I'm going to do XYZ. Give me your shopping list, or let me get that for you. What do you need picked up from the pharmacy? Or not everybody, there could be, issues with trying to transport, that loved one, like take them to a
Yes.
doctor's appointment. That would reserve that for family members. But, for family members, they can help that family member who's carrying the load by, I know dad has a doctor's appointment on this day, that time. I can take him. Or that loved one who's doing all the carrying, specifically saying to that family member, Dad has a doctor's appointment with the neurologist on December 1st at 3 o'clock in South Park or wherever. Get them all the details, and,
Hmm.
be very specific in your request. So for those things that are, need to be done by family members because of the legal or medical ramifications, recruit your family and tell them specifically not what you need, not just letting them, well, call me if you need anything. Tell them what you need to lighten your load and to take things off of your plate. And for those friends, instead of waiting for them to say, call me if you need anything or let me know if you need anything, could you help me with XYZ? Or for
Yep.
that friend to offer specific assistance, not just the general placating, well, let me know if you need anything. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I would suggest.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. One of the suggestions I heard at one point that I thought was really great was giving somebody options. Like, I can come over and walk your dog, I can mow your lawn, or I can pick up prescriptions. What is the most helpful thing?
Oh, I
So
love that.
it's letting them know what you are capable of and willing to do, and
Mhm.
then they can choose what's most helpful.
I love that. That's
And
great.
don't underestimate helping with pets.
Mm,
Especially if it's a dog that needs to be walked.
mhm.
Sometimes it's most helpful for the caregiver to be the one to go walk the animal because then they're getting out of the house and they're getting some exercise, but they need somebody to come sit with their person.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
I like to touch on that as often as possible because it's the biggest pain point that I hear from people is, oh, let me know what I can do for you. And then
Yeah.
nobody asks because it's just one more thing to have to think about.
Yeah, and making sure that they introduce, that person is introduced to the loved one they're going to sit with. So it's not just like, you're pulling somebody like, wow, here's Joe, and then the parents like, I don't know who Joe is. And they might not remember him 5 minutes later, but introducing them so they know, or hopefully say, well, he's sat with you before, blah, 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 blah. But, easing that person in so they become familiar,
Yeah.
and they become familiar and the loved one comes to be familiar with them. Because
Right,
that can probably be a little scary if you just drop a new stranger on them and then, you leave. That could be
right.
really not pleasant for either of the people. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Ideally, it's someone they already know.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you've given me some things to think about. So the wheels are turning, which is why I'm like, oh, what do I want to talk about next?
That was your thinking face. Okay. Got
That was
it.
my thinking phase.
Got it.
Um, so why don't we come back around? We talked about your career journey bit, and then we went back to caregiving. So let's talk about how you've created certain programs that you're offering now, because that kind of brings it all together.
Absolutely. Yeah, it took a lot of thinking and a lot of brain power. And I don't say that in an arrogant way at all. It's just when pivot in your business, it's cognitively heavy
Yes.
activities to figure out all the pieces and parts. And then you figure out which pieces, haven't fit together as well as you think when you get too many puppy dog head tilts,
Mhm.
as my daughter and I call them. But what I've done is, like I mentioned, is integrating the desserts or the dessert analogies. Because, like I said, it's not realistic to provide desserts on every occasion, especially like if it's an out of the town out of the town. Let's try that again. Out of town engagement,
Yeah.
and there's 300 people in the audience. Well, that's turning it into a catering event, not a talk on caregiver advocacy.
Mhm.
So I had to be very strategic and careful in my, wording with that. But the services that I currently offer, and I've just updated all this on my website. Like I said, this was part of the cognitive, that wasn't a sales pitch. That was just really reinforcing all this thinking I had to do to map it
Right.
out. So my
Yeah.
offers were clear because if you confuse, you lose. People aren't
Yes.
going to try and figure it out. They just bounce to another website. But the
Mhm.
services that I offer now are keynote speaking, breakout sessions, fireside chat, panel discussions, workshops, and training. And I've got it all laid out on the website. So if somebody's like, I don't know what that is, well, you click the link, learn more, and it tells you exactly what it is and how it's different from the other offerings. So that way it gives the the customer, the potential client, different options to choose from that are going to fit the goals that they're trying to achieve and
Mhm.
address the pain points they're trying to have me help them alleviate.
Cool. So, can you give us some examples of who or what type of person might be your client? Are you
Absolutely.
serving
Yeah,
organization?
yeah, I had to break that down and had to, was part of the cognitively heavy activities once again, because when I, didn't explain it well, it shifted me to, the wrong group. But the way I've got it laid out now is that, my target is HR, DEI, wellness, benefits, also ERGs, and also employee caregivers.
Mhm.
Then the second part of that, I kind of had to separate it. It's cleverly worded on the website, or lost my thought for a second. Event planners, but
Mhm.
they're not my audience. They're a market I want
Right.
to appeal to, but they're not my target audience. I want them to know that I exist. So when they're looking for unique conference topics or just, yeah, topics or speakers, they're like, oh, Chef Maria talks about caregiver advocacy and she's got this great way that she brings desserts into the story. I
Mhm.
need that for my audience. So that's those are the different pieces. And the way I always envision like the HR, the DEI, the wellness, the benefits people, specifically, is it
Mhm.
could be those leaders at corporations or organizations. There's HR focus organizations, like SHRM and a million other ones, and where they may bring me in to do a session with, their leaders or their C-suite or their managers, because then I can do a workshop or, a keynote, whichever fits, their objectives best, and say, okay, I bet you didn't know you have caregivers hidden among your employees.
Right.
Because why do I say hidden? Because they keep that identity secret and they're not going to self-disclose it or self-identify. You're seeing it show up as absenteeism and problems and productivity. And why is Jane out all the time and she's leaving on a moment's notice and she's late and blah, 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 blah. But you don't know she's a caregiver behind that. So
Mhm.
identifying them, showing them the signs to look for of a possible hidden caregiver, and then also the signs of burnout to look for and
Mhm.
how they can help them and have
Yeah.
those, have conversations with them, because, it all ends up going back to, most employees are part of a team.
Right.
So if you're part of a team and you're one of a four-person team and all they do is see you coming in late, leaving early and taking phone calls in the middle of meetings and all the things that we know caregivers go through, but not understand that's what you're going through, there is a certain amount that can be safely shared when management is on board with that team so they can figure out how to really be a team and still thrive and survive and support that person who's also caregiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it can be from that side, or it could be an audience of caregivers, and that's like one of the things I did with who was it? The city of Charlotte with they call it EWAP, which stands for employees of employees of aging employees with aging parents. I think that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so they were all caregivers with aging parents or either other loved ones that they were caring for as well. So my presentation to them was talking about, the things that they go through, the self-care. And I went beyond, take a bubble bath, go for a walk. I mean, because if you're taking a bubble bath, you might never get out again because you've got that much stress. uh, but also things to look for. Um, and when it's time to make a change, different levels of care, legal, and financial ramifications without getting too deep in the legal or financial, because I'm not a lawyer, and from that perspective. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Oh, that's excellent. One of the things I would love to see us get to as a conversation and culture shift is employers creating an environment within their organization where caregivers don't feel like they have to hide.
That would be a beautiful thing. And I know the Harvard Business Review did an article because two or three different people sent it to me. And you could Google the title and it says why your company needs an elder care policy. And
Mm,
there's two companies that were highlighted in there. It was Microsoft and I don't know how you say it, AbbVie, ABB.
AbbVie. Yep, they're a pharmaceutical company.
Right, right, where, they were mentioned, very favorably in the article. And I've read SHRM reports where it was talking about, if we could have like, like they have childcare, not a flex spending account, but, childcare, reimbursement, could you do
Mhm.
the same thing for adult daycare? But
Yeah,
making caregiver inclusive benefits available and policies, you know,
right.
when the whole thing happened with DEI, that made me sad in so many ways, but also one of the identities that gets missed 87% by organizations under DEI strategies is the caregiver identity.
Yes.
So we've just made it more difficult for caregivers to get the support and the resources that they need. We already know that most of the weight, and I use the word burden in a very gentle way, but it's an appropriate use of the word, falls upon the family.
Yes.
And so now we've just made it even more burdensome for the family to carry the weight without additional assistance.
Right. Yeah. And the thing that I like to impress upon people when we're talking about the corporate world is the first companies, first businesses, the first organizations who come out with a strong caregiving plan for their employees, caregiving assistance plan, they're the companies that are going to win.
Oh,
And all of the other companies are going to scramble to catch up. And
yeah.
you were talking about ERGs earlier, just for the folks who are listening who may not know what that is. It's employee resource groups. So large organizations have these employee resource groups for different areas within their organization. So African American, Asian, gay, lesbian, bi, like different identifications. And it's a community support within that large company. And the smart companies who still have them are also adding caregivers to
Mhm.
those employee resource groups.
Right. And I was on a call, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and some companies had to disband them under, the new executive orders.
Yeah,
But, those are just okay, well, they can't be company sponsored anymore, but you can't stop people from getting together organically
right.
and voluntarily. It's just not backed by the company anymore because the needs still exist, and I agree with you. Those people, because you know the stats as well as I do on how big and how fast the caregiver crisis, let's call it what it is, in the rate and the speed that it's growing at. So
Yes.
I agree with you 2000%. Whoever brings it to market first to make a caregiver inclusive policy or environment or benefits in a real way and not just a performative way, they're going to win because
Mhm.
everybody is being affected.
Right. People
Everybody.
will leave jobs in a heartbeat to
Hmm.
work at the company that supports that
Right.
because what's the statistic? 10,000 people a day are turning 65 between now and 2030.
Right. Yep. Silver
You're looking
tsunami.
at a huge chunk of your workforce who are now your experienced workforce, who have made their way into leadership and C-suite and management, who are going to have to make a choice whether they keep working or they quit because it's too much and they are going to choose their family every time.
Right. And you know this as well as I do. The other part of it is people are realizing now where before they thought, oh, when we're talking about, caregivers, we're just talking about, an elderly person, the old man down the street, or grandma, grandpa. But now that we've expanded that, and then I don't know if it's necessarily expanded or it's becoming more to the forefront now, where, I talked about in one of my email blasts or something I sent out, I'm like, we're talking about four different groups. We're talking about the elderly, we're talking about the children, because we're not supposed to leave them home under 18, for
Mhm.
by themselves, at least not for a long period of time. Then we're talking about disabled loved ones of any age, and then the
Yeah.
sandwich generation. And people typically miss the sandwich generation, where you're taking care of the elderly on one end and then children on the other end. So
Yep.
tell me who that doesn't touch.
Right. Exactly. I always joke, I had brown hair before I was sandwich generation.
Yeah, I have a lot more gray than I used to. I was after two parents, and oh, my dad, he had late stage Alzheimer's with the paranoia with it. So he was funny when things were good and we had a great time, but I think I got some more gray hairs from through that experience.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel that. My mom had Alzheimer's and my kids were really young. I mean, diapers and
Oh,
trying to juggle all of that. And there are families who there is a spouse who is sick and they have young children. So it's not necessarily sandwich generation. It's, I don't
right.
know, you're the food person. What
I don't
an
know. We don't
entree and a side?
we don't have a name for that. Maybe we need to make up one. I don't even know. Maybe it's not a peanut butter and jelly generation. I
Yeah,
don't
something
know.
like
I
that.
can't, nothing. Don't put me on the spot, Katie.
Sorry. We'll call it the entree and the side.
Okay, I like that. That works. Oh, wow. Yeah.
We'll work on it.
Definitely.
So we mentioned your website. Do you want to just share, verbalize what the website is for the folks who are listening if they want to
Yes,
come check out your services?
absolutely. www.beyonddecadence.com. That's www.beyonddecadence.com. If you don't know how to spell decadence, you better Google it or you won't get the site right.
And how about on social? If they're on social, where will they find you?
Oh, same thing. Everything is under Beyond Decadence on
Okay.
Instagram. It's at Beyond Decadence. Instagram. LinkedIn is Chef Maria Kemp. It's just Chef Maria Kemp.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I tried to
There,
keep it easy.
is there anything else you would like to share with the audience about your story, about what you do, words
Sure.
of wisdom?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, what's happening for me right now is I'm really excited to be here, doing podcasts, I'm moderating and being panelist at different events that are coming up. So, I always wondered when I was going through the stories with either parent, just crying and on the floor crying and just stressed out and beyond belief, just, why God, why? And he didn't answer then, but now it's become clearer now because friends said, not, this isn't Maria saying this. If you wouldn't have been there for your parents, they wouldn't have lasted as long as they did. My mom lasting 6 years, 7 months, and one day between four different nursing homes
Wow.
was nothing short of a miracle because her stroke was really severe. But now as I see, and my dad, oh my goodness, he called the police in New York. What did they tell me? 20 times in a 6 month period
Oh my.
because he thought, the neighbors were breaking in and drugging him and doing things, and this was all the paranoia. And I
Yeah.
say all that, and I've shared the story, respectfully, openly, because I want other people to understand. I understand your journey. There's so
Hmm.
many things I went through with both of them that I haven't even shared yet. I get it. And that's why I'm using my voice and my platform now to say, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I've been there, and I want you to know you're not alone. Because when you're going through this, most of the times you feel like you are alone. And
Yes.
finding other people who get it, where you don't have to like set up the whole story before you tell them, finding
Right.
where you belong in that sense of community. I urge you to do that so you can, feel and sense and believe that you're not alone and you have
Mhm.
people that you can count on and turn to. And my goodness, get yourself in a caregiver support group. I was in one here. There's one in the Charlotte area that, I can give Katie the information, or do you want me to just mention the name now?
Yeah, you can mention it and you can send it to me and I'll make sure I post it in the
Okay.
show notes.
Yeah, it's called the Frankie May Foundation, and it's Frankie Franki and May is Mae. And it's named after her mom, who they cared for in their home for 10 years with Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
And she's done an amazing job at building that community of caregivers. They do some things virtually, but she's also a great resource. I'm happy to be a traffic cop and point you to resources that I know. But beyond that, what I'm doing is continuing to build the community and doing a newsletter once a week that gives tips for each of those three different audiences for the caregiver, for the HR DEI people to try and say, hey, look, here's some things you need to think about, please, and
Yeah.
for event planners. Because if I can hit all three of those groups and continue to grow that, it's going to help all those people like me who were when I was by myself laying on the floor crying, trying to
Yes.
get through all the latest whatever that had just, exploded that I was trying to deal with by myself. You
Yeah.
cannot do this alone. The weight is too heavy, and I urge you to surround yourself with a community and engage in that community so you have the support and the resources that you need and access to things you're going to need as that loved one continues to change and evolve and as their disease progresses and with all the changes that are happening from, a Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, all the jazz, all the things.
Mhm.
If you're plugged into the right community, you'll be plugged in well and well positioned as those things change so you don't get caught off guard because you also need to know the legal and the financial side. There are things that you need to do now that you can't
Mhm.
wait until crisis hits or the last minute, or
Yes.
you won't be positioned well for your loved one or yourself at all. So
Agreed.
I know that was a whole lot for a closing thought. I think I went over.
No, but I'm so glad I asked because it's a lot of good information and you reminded me of something that I haven't shared here yet is it's because I just found it recently, courtesy of another guest. There is a Facebook group called Sandwich Generation Caregivers. So
Oh,
if you are a caregiver, you don't have to be Sandwich Generation. It just caters to folks who are in that specific position. There are thousands of people who belong to that group,
mm,
and people post questions, folks answer. You don't have to participate. You can just read and learn. And you can post anonymously. You don't have to have your name associated. And people share very raw, very real feelings and situations, and it is not a place of judgment. So if you don't have anywhere else to go, I would start there because it is a great community of support. And hi, I'm a member.
that's awesome.
You'll
You
see me in there.
You made me think of something else. It's just like, you don't have to carry the weight all on your own, and I say that again because sometimes it may be that you need, like an adult daycare. And
Yeah.
sometimes people don't even know those exist when you're trying to
Right.
figure out, I got to go to work, I've got to, da da. I have trying to have caregivers come in the home. It's not working. They're not showing up. Well, there
Mhm.
are adult daycares that exist. Also, I've had people ask before, how do you try and manage care when the loved one is out of state? There are, and you probably know another title for them, Katie, but like geriatric care managers, and they help
Yeah.
coordinate, your care for that loved one and act as your eyes and ears to help you vet resources and help for that loved one.
Mhm.
Because I think yeah, I just did my email. My newsletter this week and I said about care, from a distance, long distance, because that's
Right.
very real that,
Mhm.
individuals are trying to figure that out. So there are resources available. The costs are going to vary on some of them,
Yep.
but once you plug into these groups, then they can help tell you, if there's funding or grants. There's a lot of corporations who, will do grants or might have charitable trust that they are contributing to some of these nonprofits that are specifically designed to help this segment of people. So plug in and stop trying to do it by yourself. Tuck your Superman or Superwoman cape away, for this and get the help that is available.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, on that note, Chef Maria, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for
You're
joining us wherever you are. Next
Thank you.
time, we will be talking with more experts and people who have walked this path and are ready to share their stories. We will see you next time. Take care.